Correct? Excuse me. There we go. Just making sure.
It's recorded.
Sorry.
May I speak now, Mr. Kennellan?
Yes, I apologize. I was just trying to make
That's
sure
okay.
that
I
we
accept your
record.
apology. I accept it. I'm going to begin the meeting and I'm going to ask the students to start us with the pledge, please. Colleen, you have the flag?
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. You could all stand for the pledge.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of
the
the
United
States
of America,
to the republic
Republic
which stands
One
one
nation,
nation under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Clark, I'm going to call on you for a moment.
Yes. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence for John Formeister, who was age 73 and he died on October 17th. He was the head custodian at DePaulo for 23 years. And when I was a parent, a PTO parent at South End, we had to move our Halloween party to DePaulo for many years due to the large number of attendees that we had. And Jack, who I always referred to as Grumpy Jack, was wonderfully accommodating to the South End families, always staying to make sure that we had everything we needed and never complaining when we put things back in the wrong place, which we always did. He epitomized the wonderful community spirit we have here in Southington, and especially Board of Ed employees. He went above and beyond, especially for the kids. Jack leaves a wife, 3 children, and 3 grandchildren. Rest in peace, Grumpy Jack.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmody.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes from our October 8th, 2020 meeting, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next on our agenda is our presentation this evening. So welcome. And your name is?
My name is Christine McNelly, and I'm with Raptor Technologies.
Christine? I don't know if Mr. Kennellan's got his hand up, so
I
I'm
can do a little preamble, if you will.
Okay.
All right.
Sure.
Go ahead.
We talked about this particular item last year, and the board chose to move funds from funding this particular item to another area of the operating budget as the budget was adopted. At that point in time, we talked about having someone from Raptor Technologies come in and speak with the board and do a presentation. And then we were a bit derailed, shall we say, with regard to that, because we ended up all at home for most of the time. And so we didn't move in that direction. Since that time, we've had Ms. McNelly come back, and she recently, about a month ago or so, I think, Christine, right, did a presentation to our School Safety and Security Committee, our interagency committee, which you know is comprised of not only school personnel, but command staff for Southington Police Department, Southington Fire Department, Public Health Emergency Management Services, and our partners and collaborators from the YMCA who run our before and after school programs. So as a result of that meeting, we then thought it would be a good idea to do a presentation for the board so that you could have some firsthand information and be able to ask questions, etc. So, Christine, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Great. So I'm gonna share my screen. How long do I have? I don't want to take up too much of you. I know you guys.
You've got about 5 minutes. No, I'm only kidding.
Oh, I was like, oh my God.
We'll give you 6, Christine.
Okay.
I think the presentation and the Q&A that you did to the School Safety Committee was, I think it was a total of about 45 minutes.
Yeah, and I can make it shorter.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I don't have to keep that long. I'll go over, I have a kind of condensed version. I don't want to bore you guys, but let me share my screen. Okay. Can Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for allotting me some time at your meeting. I know you have a lot of important things to get to, so I won't be long. So just to start with a little background about Raptor, if you guys aren't very familiar, our mission is very simple, is to protect every child, every school, every day. And we really pride ourselves on being a school safety partner as opposed to just a vendor. This slide shows what we call our Raptor fundamentals. And as you can see, focus on customer success is number one, because that's what's most important to us. And that is why we have a 98.9% retention rate. And we're really, really proud of that. We know that your success is our success. This is just a heat map of where we are in the country. Texas is where our company is located. So you can see it's pretty heavily populated, but all over the East Coast, we have a lot of clients. And more specific to you guys, we have over 320 schools in Connecticut. And just in Connecticut, we have issued over 2,000 sex offender alerts and over 2,000 custom alerts. And just some larger districts in Connecticut that are using Raptor: Hartford, Danbury, Norwalk, Bristol, West Hartford, New Britain, and Stratford. We are the only company in our space that utilizes the full enterprise class software process, everything from product management and development to cloud operations and security, client services and support. And most important to most school district is IT security best practices. You can sleep well at night knowing your data is very safe with Raptor because we have all of these protections. And then lastly, it's our history of innovation. You're never going to have to leave Raptor and go with a company that is more technologically advanced or in tune to your school's issues. We only serve the K-12 market. So we're constantly learning from our customers what they need to secure their schools, and we adapt our software to their needs. Our Raptor Visitor Management Suite consists of visitor management, which I'm going to show you guys tonight, volunteer management, which is a whole end-to-end solution with volunteer management, and emergency management, which is drill management, accountability, and parent-student reunification. So later down the line, if you guys are interested in any of those, the other two pieces, we can revisit those. So let's just take a look at visitor management. These are the things I just want to point out before we get into the actual software. Every time a visitor comes into one of your buildings, we do an instant sex offender screening. We also have a custom database that all of your visitors are screened against. The custom database can be anyone that you don't want into your buildings, but usually it's custody issues. So you always have accurate visitor records when a visitor came in, when they went out, and what they were doing. And we have full district-wide reporting. So at the district level, you can find out what's going on in every single one of your buildings. So before we go into the code response, I'm just going to pop out of here and go right into the Raptor system. So this is where your Raptor administrator would spend about 95% of their time. Raptor is completely web-based. I'm just going to plug in my camera so I can show you my equipment. Let me show you my, oops. So this is the Raptor scanner. This is where your front-end user, your secretary, would put the visitor license. And then this is the Dymo printer that prints out the badge. Okay, so the visitor management system consists of 5 modules: visitor, contractor, student, staff, and volunteer. Everything in Raptor is highly customizable. So if you guys decided you wanted to just use the visitor and the contractor module, we get rid of the other 3. And as we go through the functionality, you'll see a lot of areas where it is highly customizable to your needs. Let's see, is that everything? Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 3 examples of what it looks like when a visitor signs into your building. A first-time visitor that needs a government-issued ID, a return visitor that doesn't need an ID, and then a manual entry if they do not have a scannable ID. So let's say we have a first-time visitor going into your building, and they hand their ID, their license, to your secretary. Your secretary will put it into the scanner. Your secretary can put it into the scanner anyway. There's no wrong way to put the license in. They're going to click on Scan ID, and then the license is pulled into the scanner. And there's lights blinking right now, so it's reading the information off of the 2D barcode on my license. It's retrieving the first name, last name, and date of birth, and my license just popped back up, and my information appears on the screen. So it captures my picture as well as my first name, last name, date of birth. And it's going to ask me where I'm headed in the building. Again, this list is totally customizable, so you can have any destinations you'd like. And it can be customized to each building. Down here is where we have what we call a health check. This is new. This is some COVID functionality that we added since COVID. So these are all questions right out of the box from the CDC. But again, these can be customized. You can take some out, you can add some. But these are just, again, right from the CDC. So we're going to ask that visitor all of these questions about their health. And if we click on no to all of them, and we're going to submit and print. So now we're checking all that information, the first name, last name, date of birth, against the sexual offender database and the custom database. And I passed both databases, and I answered no to all the COVID questions. So my badge is printed. It says visitor, it's date and time stamped, it has my picture, it says where I'm going in the building, and it has the name of the building. Okay, any questions about the first time visitor? No, you guys are good? All right, so return visitor is very similar, but you only need to scan your license once, because once you scan that license, we save that information in the cloud. So let's say I come back next week, I say my name is Christine McNally, your secretary will put the name in the quick find. Oops, I forgot to sign out. I forgot to show you how to sign out. So when your visitor leaves for that day, the secretary will go to the sign out tab, and then all of the visitors that are currently signed into the building will be listed here. You can toggle over the picture to make sure you're signing out the right person and click on sign out. Now you have an accurate record of when that person came in, when they left, where they were, and what they were doing. Okay, now we're going to go back to, let's say I came back next week, I put my name in the quick find, and my information appears. Let's say this time, you can also write destinations in that are going to be printed out. So if it's not in the drop-down menu, let's say we're going to room 103, you can just write that in the menu. I'm sorry, in the box, you can put any notes. Let's say I'm going to say no to all these health questions. And if you don't want to have this can be turned off. This was just an added piece. So we're going to submit and print. And although I did not scan my ID, all that information is still being checked against both databases, National Sex Offender Registry, as well as that custom database that is created at the district level or the school level. My badge is printed, visitor, date and time stamped. It has my name, the room that I'm going to, and the name of the school. So that is a second return visitor. And then the last example is if you have a visitor that comes into your building and they do not have a scannable ID. So maybe they have a passport. So your secretary would click on manual entry and then carefully put all the information in exactly how it is on the ID. If you wanted to make it an official record and you had a camera on your computer, you could take a picture and then click off official record. And that would mean that visitor would not have to bring their ID the next time they were there. If it's an ID like maybe a Costco card that you're going to accept for this time, but you don't want to make it official, you just don't click that. And then the next time they have to have a more appropriate form of ID. Okay, any questions about that? I'm gonna cancel that.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Bob.
It talks about sex offenders. Does it check all criminal records or just that particular?
Just the sex offender registry in the 50 states.
So if it's like a burglary or a drunk driving or something else, that wouldn't show up.
No, what some districts though have a list of, they have like a report that they get from the police with local incidents, and you can put those in your custom database if you'd like. But no, that specific database is just the sex offenders.
And a second question, who's, okay, when you're going in the building, you do this process, who sees that information?
Just the secretary. So you mean that if there's a hit on the sexual offender database?
Right.
So that's a great question. So if there is a hit, and that was my next thing that I was going to show you, a text message and an email goes out to a designated list of recipients that you all choose who you want to receive that message. Usually it's like a principal, vice principal, SRO, someone that's going to come and assist the front end user with that visitor to let them know that they're either not allowed to come to the building or they need to be escorted to wherever they're going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Christine, I have a question. What if there's child custody situation and, one parent isn't allowed to come
Yep.
into the school to see, how would you handle that?
So that is built into our custom database, and I'm going to show you both of those right now. So if you could
Okay.
just hold that question for about 2 seconds. Let
Okay,
me first show you the sexual offender, what happens when there's a match. So
okay,
let's say we have John Doe coming into the school. He's a return visitor. His information appears. Let's say he's going to the library to help with the librarian. We're going to ask all of his COVID questions. We're going to say no, he doesn't have any COVID symptoms. We're going to submit and print. And the badge does not print, and I get this possible offender alert. So the first, I can see there's 1 of 12. I can see that these two are not the same people, but they have the same first and last name and date of birth. So that's why he came up on the list. When I click on no match, Raptor remembers false positives. So your front end user will never have to compare these 2 matches again. Okay, so that's very important because that's a big differentiator with Raptor. The next one does not look like the same guy either. And he doesn't have the same first name and last name, but if I scroll down a little bit, he has the same alias. So we're not only checking against the 800,000 sex offenders that exist, but the 400,000 aliases that exist. But I'm going to say it's a no match. And again, you're never going to have to compare these 2 matches again. The next one, I can tell right away that it is a match. If it wasn't this clear, I can click here for more information. It'll bring me right to the sexual offender database page, and I'll see more pictures. But I know this is a match, so I'm going to click on match. I get a second chance to verify. Yes, it's a match. And then it's going to say, do you still want to sign into the building? I'm going to say no. And then that's when these alerts go out to the designated list of recipients. So it might be, again, principal, vice principal, SRO. Here's the email that I just received. So it says an offender named John Doe was logged today. And then I also, let me show you my phone. I just got a text message. And it says an offender named John Doe was logged today, 10/22/2020 at 6:22 and signing into McNally High School, below the visitor information. So again, a text and an email goes out to whomever you like, and also can be send it to someone at the district level, just so they're aware. So then that person again would come to the front desk. Your secretary might say, John, can you step aside? We're having your badge and print, and in the meantime, the alerts go out and someone will come assist. Either escort, if it's a parent, sometimes schools will escort that the parent to wherever they're going in the school. Okay, the next question that I will address, the next thing that will address that question is, let's say we have a dad, Edmund, and he's coming in to have lunch with his son, Sam. So here's Edmund's information. Let's say he's going to the lunchroom and he's having lunch with Sam. We can put that in the notes. Edmund doesn't have any COVID symptoms. I'm going to submit and print. Again, his badge does not print. And I get this custom alert. Right away, I can see it's the same guy. I'm going to look in the notes. It says Edmund is Sam's non-custodial parent. He is entitled to supervised visitation on the weekends only. Please click on the link below. And when I click on the link below, I see a copy of the custody agreement. Okay, does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So I'm going to say it's a match. I'm going to verify, yes, it's a match. No, I don't want to sign Edmund into the building. And then that text message and email gets sent to that designated list of recipients.
Mhm.
Okay, it can be as many recipients as you want in any building you want. Any questions about those alerts? And although most of them are custody issues, anyone that you don't want in all of your schools, so you can put them in at the district level, or if there's someone that you don't want in one of your schools for whatever reason, irate parents or it's kids that were expelled, known gang members, anyone can be in that database. All right. So that is the visitor module. The other modules work very similarly. The contractor module is for contractors. So you can import all your approved contractors in the system so they can all go through the quick find. And if their name does not come up, that means they're not an approved contractor. So that means they can't do work in your building, or you can just have them scan just like your other visitors. But let's say that Ryan comes into the building and he's here to fill the vending machines. We have Ryan's first name, last name, date of birth. We also have the company that he works with. we're going to say that he's going to the cafeteria to fill the vending machines and his health check. So I didn't really go over these. If you answer yes to any of these health check questions, it acts just like the sex offender alert. The list of recipients of the alert can be different. So if you want to send those alerts to the nurse or someone else that is going to handle your suspected COVID visitors, so they can quickly escort them out of the building. But that's how there's alerts set on all of these questions as well. Okay, but since did I answer? Yeah, I answered no. So I'm going to submit and print. And now Ryan's information is being checked against the sexual offender database as well as the custom database. He cleared both databases and his badge says contractor. It's date and time stamped. It has his name, the company that he works for, where he is in the building, and the name of the building. Okay, so we always suggest, I think that it seems that the contractor module is the most, I guess, difficult to implement just because a lot of districts, their contractors kind of have free range of the building. But we always try and, tell our customers that it's a really important module. A lot of our sex offender hits come from the contractor module. We sold this to Arlington, Virginia, about a year ago, and they had a contractor that was working in the building for 10 years. And the first day they had Raptor, they found out he was a sex offender. So he had his background check done by his company, but it could have been, years ago. So our sex offender database is updated weekly. So you can always rest assured that it's up to date. Any questions about that contractor module?
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. Shanowski had a question.
Okay.
Yeah, so is this entire suite connected to the internet? Is this like a software as a service?
Yes, this is totally web-based. So there's no installation of software onto the machines.
What happens when, let's say there's an outage, an internet outage? Does the whole scanner stop working, or do you have something like locally cached that you can?
It's not local, but we do have a, you can sign the person in later. So if you if you don't have an internet connection and 2 or 3 guests come in, you can put them on paper and then manually put them in the system. So you do have a record of them within Raptor.
So the sex offender part and the custom alerts, though, those won't be available when the system is offline?
Correct.
Any other board members with questions? Because I can't see all of you. I'm only seeing 3 or 4 of you. All right, Christine, go ahead.
Okay, so just like the visitor module, when the contractors sign out, they go back to the office. So right here, you would have a list of all of your currently signed in contractors, and you just can mouse over and then sign your contractor out. The student module was created for late arrivals and early dismissals. So we connect with your SIS, we integrate with your SIS, so we have all your student information in here. So let's say we have a student, I'm in the high school, so let's say we have Marcia Brady. She's coming in late, so we'll put her name in the quick find and we'll click on sign in Marcia. So all of Marcia's information appears again directly from your SIS. Let's say she's late because she overslept, and we're going to submit and print. We are not checking Marcia against any database. We're just simply signing her in late, and her late badge will print. Her badge says student pass. It has date and time stamped, has her name, her ID, the reason she was late, and the name of her school. So she can give that to her teacher so that the teacher knows that she signed in at the office. Let's say Marcia is leaving early. So again, we'll put her name in the quick find and we will sign out Marcia Brady. Again, her information comes up. Now we see a list of her guardians also from the SIS. This is a high school, so we could do a self sign out, but if this was an elementary school, we can say Alice is here to pick her up. And then when we do a guardian sign out, now we're going to look at the guardian's information. And we are going to say she's leaving because she has a dentist appointment. And we're going to submit and print. We're checking Alice's information against that sexual offender database as well as that custom database. And once she clears both of those databases, her badge is printed. Oops. Her badge is printed and it says it's an early dismissal. It's date and time stamped, has Alice's name, the child she's picking up, and the name of the school. So that's how the student module works. Any questions about the student module?
I have a question.
Sure.
So the list of people that are allowed to pick up, where does that come from? Is that just, I'm here to pick up?
That,
And
so approved guardians are from your SIS.
Okay,
So if they're on your SIS, they'll appear there. You can always do a one-time pickup and allow that person, if your policy allows that, to pick up that student.
and you run them through the system every time?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. Anything else for the student? Okay, the staff basically was created for like roaming IT staff or substitute teachers. We're not checking your staff against the sexual offender database or your substitute teachers since they've already had their background checks. So some schools use it differently. I have a school in New Jersey that, West Orange, New Jersey, they have a kiosk set up by their main entrance of all their schools, and it's just for staff to sign in and out. They have a 2D barcode on their badge, and they run it under a 2D barcode reader in one of our kiosk stations. And they sign in and out every time they're coming or leaving the building. So the safety director knows who's in the building if there were an emergency. And then the volunteer module, again, there's a couple ways that can be used. The volunteer, what comes with this whole visitor management package, the volunteers, is you can import all of your approved volunteers. And then when a volunteer comes in, they put their name in the quick find. If it comes up, that means they're an approved volunteer, and their hours are recorded. If they're not an approved volunteer, but they're reading to someone, they could always go in through a visitor, but their hours won't be recorded unless they're approved. We also have a full volunteer solution, which I talked about a teeny bit earlier, but it's a full end-to-end solution, but it's not included in the visitor management. It's a way that your parents can apply to be volunteers through Raptor. They can get their background checks done through Raptor. They can have communication with the school volunteer directors, and there's emails. They have a portal. They can check their hours. So it's a whole full end-to-end solution volunteer system. But the one that's included is basically you import your already approved volunteers and record their hours. Okay, any questions about that?
I have a question.
Sure.
How about a parent that comes in to bring the kids gym shoes or lunch, and so you do the same thing here? You put the parent's name in the system, and okay.
Yeah, we suggest everyone that comes through the door, if it's a UPS guy dropping off a package, it takes 15 to 20 seconds to do the whole process.
Okay.
So we really suggest that you just want a recording of any time someone was in the building. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sometimes it's hard to get used to, I know, for especially like contractors, like people that are dropping things off, but yeah, that's what we suggest. And speaking of that, so we have a very robust reporting system. You can run reports about basically anything you want to run reports about, your visitors, your contractors, students, staff, volunteers. You can find out at any time who is in every single building across your entire district. You can sign up for subscriptions. So if you say, every Monday, I want an email sent to me telling me what sex offender alerts were issued last week. So there's a bunch of subscriptions you subscribe for, so you can get emails with any kind of reports in them. Any questions about the reports? Okay, you're almost done. I just wanted to quickly touch on the COVID response functionality that we added. I mentioned the kiosk. This is basically what it looks like. You can use your own computer for a kiosk with a laptop and plug in a 2D barcode reader and a badge printer. You can also have the badge printer just networked to the secretary station, which is a little bit more secure. So there is some one-to-one, human contact, just picking up the badge. But a lot of schools are using kiosks now as well, just because it's less, contact. Mm-hmm. We went through these health questions, and those health questions are also available on the kiosk so that your visitors can also answer the questions there. Contact tracing is a report. So if you have if you find out a visitor a couple days later that was in your school, it was COVID positive at the time of their visit, you can put their name into a report and find out all the other visitors, contractors, and volunteers that were in the building at the same time. Another thing we offer is remote self-screening. I don't know if this is, I think, Tim, we talked about this, that you guys were not having your students self-screened at home before they came to school.
We've asked parents to do that, but we don't have
No,
this type of a system now.
no.
Okay, so this is something, this is extra, but it's something, of course, that we created since COVID. A bunch of districts are using it, but basically a parent is sent an email every single morning. They click on the link, it brings them to a health check of their children, either one child or a few children, and then they get a code at the end if they pass it. It's very simple. You can run a report on it. A couple things I just want to point out that are coming. These are not available yet, but they're awesome. They're things that our partners have asked for. One is visitor registration pre-screening. Especially with COVID, you want to know how many visitors you're going to expect on a day, so you can keep your numbers low for social distancing. So this is going to be a way for your visitors to kind of register before they get to the building. So this is in development right now. Another thing that's in development is touchless check-in. So a visitor can actually check in with their phone and then scan a code. And that way they don't have to do any sort of checking. That is also in development. And then this is not in development. This is just some communication. We give you guys signs to put up. You get letters to send out to your parents. And what else we have some signage that you can customize. And then these were just a couple of different configurations. Now with COVID, a lot of schools are putting the scanner on the other side of the plexiglass, and so visitors can drop their own ID into the scanner as opposed to handing it to a secretary. And then this is just another example of using a kiosk, scanning your ID, so you don't really have to have much contact with the person, and then picking up your badge with the secretary. Okay, and that's it. Not too long.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I cannot see the entire board, so I don't know if anyone has any questions. You're gonna, till I get the screen up with everyone's picture on it. So does anyone have anything they'd like to add or ask? 'Cause I can't see all of you.
Maybe if I stop sharing, you'll see.
Yeah, if you stop sharing.
Okay,
Okay, there. Thank you. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Do I have any board members with questions? Students with questions?
Can I ask one question? In the beginning of your presentation, you said that you got 24, I forget the exact number, 2,400 sex offender and 2,400 custom. Can you explain those numbers? What are those? Those are the numbers of reports you've gotten this year, or?
Yes, but just in Connecticut.
Okay, and so,
Connecticut.
okay, all right.
So those were the amount of sex offender alerts that were issued in Connecticut this year.
And how many districts do you have in Connecticut?
I think it said 32 districts.
32 and
I only
2,400.
cover the large districts like you guys. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 large districts, which is 13 schools or more.
2,400 sex offenders in 32 districts in 1 year.
I think it's 1 year, unless it's overall, but I think it's 1 year. Does that sound high?
Yes.
It sounds scary to me, actually.
It does sound scary.
That's not high.
Because
Let me
you have
check on that. I assumed it was a year, but maybe it's not. I just get.
Because you're coming out with 4,000 alerts, right? 2,400, 22,000 something sex offender and 2,000 something custom.
Correct.
Which you
Yep.
said that each-
2,800 custom. Yes, 5,000 alerts total.
And the custom includes custody and
Yes.
anything else the district decides.
Anything
they
else you
want.
want. Exactly.
Okay.
That's a
And
good
then
question. I assumed it was a year, but maybe that isn't a year. Maybe it's
That
just.
would be a good number to find out.
Yeah.
And then the second question is, on your presentation in your COVID section at the end, instead of like what you did, you took the thing, put it into the reader, read, took it out, whatever. I think I saw in the end in the kiosk, I could take my license and stick it under the thing. Like when you go to the hospital, you hold it underneath the thing, it reads it. So the secretary or administrator, nobody has to touch my
Correct.
license. And so there's
Correct.
really no touch of anything at this point. If you print out, you print out, I could do that.
Yep.
So one of the questions that came up last time when we talked about this was, in some of our schools, the offices are not near the front door. is it, so this, as you showed that kiosk example, it gave me the thought, can you set up a kiosk at the front door with a camera on it, whatever? And they could do it there, but it reads up to the office.
So the kiosk is kind of like a separate ATM, if you will. It's not connected to that secretary's machine. So it's a totally, so no. So when someone logs into the, goes into the kiosk, the secretary does not see that information on her screen.
So if they did do that and there was a sex offender violation, the office wouldn't know that if it was a remote kiosk. Is that correct?
No, they would, because there is a cue on the secretary's desk on that screen. It says kiosk and and a little number would appear and there'd be a sound. Also, their badge wouldn't print and those notifications would go out.
And would the badge print downstairs or would the badge print upstairs in the office?
Well, if there was a sex offender alert, the secretary would still have to go through and clear that person, make sure they're not matches. And if they do say the badge will print and allow them in, then the badge will print. But until that secretary clears those matches, then the badge will not print.
And are the matches cleared at the kiosk or upstairs?
No, at the secretary's desk.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, Zed, just in terms of thinking about it operationally,
Yep.
we would have it print out where one of our staff.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just wanted to, I'm running through the whole thought process. It makes it, and I didn't, the way it sounded like there was no connectivity, so it wouldn't be able to. So, but that makes perfect sense. It prints upstairs. I'm able to check, actually sounds even safer that I can check the matches upstairs per se, you know, and you're not standing in front of me while I'm doing that. And if I did have something, the alert text and email goes out while I'm still standing downstairs, right?
Correct.
Okay.
One thing though, what we suggest, best practices, all first-time visitors actually scan their ID in that little toaster, because that is the only way that the picture on the license is connected to the first name, last name on the license.
Okay.
And all return visitors can just scan their information under that 2D barcode reader on a kiosk. Their picture appears on the screen, their information, it says, "Welcome, Christine," and they answer the questions or whatever. You can have first-time visitors go in through the kiosk, and if it's a first-time visitor, it will take the visitor's picture. But if your visitor knows they're a sex offender, they can take someone else's license with them. It'll, you know, so best practices, first-time visitors always scan in, have their license scanned with a receptionist.
Okay.
But some schools say, you know what, we want all visitors, first time and returning, going through the kiosk. So they just kind of take that risk.
Okay. Thank you.
Bob?
Yes, I have a process question for the superintendent. Does our security committee make recommendations?
Yes, they do, and they can, and they actually will.
Okay, thank you.
One step further with this, with regard, one of the next things we're going to talk about is how we can and what the cost will be to create the same type of entryways that you see at the middle schools. Well, not exactly the same, because I think those doors that go from that entryway into the office, you should be buzzed in. And they're not right now. If they're buzzed from the outside into that entryway, and then people can walk right into the office. So we're missing one step there, quite honestly.
True.
So I did have a conversation just recently with who's actually one of the folks who worked on the athletic facilities study with us. It'd be a different branch or a different company, but to take a look at that and let's see what would have to happen. In most of our elementary schools, the entryway is fairly close to the office. In some, like Oshana, they're on 2 different floors, which makes it a little bit more difficult. But that would allow us to put the scanner in that area, have the person drop their license in, get it back out, have it be read on a computer on the secretary's desk, and have the badge printed off on the secretary's desk, then the secretary can buzz them in. It would be 10 times better than what we're doing right now. But of course, there's a physical structure that needs to go along with that. So that's one of the next things that we're going to talk about, Mr. Brown. That committee.
Do I see any other questions? Mr. Falvo.
Hi, so I want to thank Christina for coming in and explaining your thorough presentation on how the Raptor technologies work. And again, I appreciate that. So this is more of a comment rather than a question, but I think we should explore other options. I realized that, to my understanding, just from my own research, because I knew this was coming up, that there are other companies that produce different security systems for schools and different management systems. So if we are gonna have a serious discussion around this, I believe maybe we should have other companies come in and present to the board. I think that would be worthwhile, especially when it comes to the cost, which one would be most cost effective and which one would be the cheapest and the most effective. And also, I feel that we should have a discussion with the safety committee about the safety procedures that we already have in place in our schools before making a decision on this.
Thank you, Dave. Anyone else? Joe?
Yeah, so again, Christine, thank you very much for your presentation.
You're welcome.
So a couple of questions that I have. So as far as, so the National Sex Offender Registry, so that's, you pull that from the national database, and then is there any sort of local database that is sort of like doubled onto, or is strictly from the national level?
It is strictly from the national level for that database, and the other database is your custom database. Again, that is where you guys put whatever you want on it.
Okay. I guess one of the concerns that I have is when it comes up with that matching screen, I don't know if I like that, as far as, again, like I would imagine that your license number would be associated with the correct person, but you know, I don't know. I guess it's your picture from committing a crime or whatever is maybe different than your presentation or what it looks like on a license. So I guess I have a couple uncertainties with that. And then as far as the secondary customizable database, who fills that stuff out? Is that more of a, I guess, Tim, is that something that occurs at the
Yes.
central
Building.
office?
So it's a building level. What typically happens is that at each building, we don't have a lot, but more than you would think. There are custody arrangements. And so, for example, if there's a set of parents who then become divorced and one parent has physical custody and has certain rights and another parent doesn't, we are generally presented at the school level with the paperwork from the court. And so that information would go into this database. And those are the types of things that we check right now, but it would go into the database to make it more efficient, quicker, easier to be able to access that information.
Okay. So that's helpful. And then I guess my third and final question is, anytime there's some sort of security system that we're looking to do, I guess my biggest question would be, how much does this move the dial, so to speak? So if we say that we're 95% safety oriented, security oriented, you know, how much does this move the dial? And then I guess the secondary component of that is, because of, I just looked at the high school, and certainly we're in a COVID world right now, but I assume that eventually we're going to get back to somewhat of a more substantial normal, where we have people coming to games, we have people from other surrounding towns coming in to do, to either watch a game or to view an art exhibit or something like that. I guess my question is, this sort of puts a patch on one particular area, and I don't know if this necessarily creates more of a global security across the board.
So I
see you
don't know if,
squinting. Yeah, no,
well, I don't know if I don't know if we need to pull Christine into this discussion. I will tell you, you're talking about two entirely different things.
Well, I just don't know, is this type
normal
of system able to accommodate like a higher
So if you let me finish,
Yep.
let's take a normal non-COVID world, and we have a youth basketball game at school, boys or girls, doesn't matter which one. The general public is invited in, and they come in, the press come in. That's the norm. We're not screening people to come in. What we're looking at here is a visitor management system when you have your 2,000 students in the high school and controlling that access. That's what this is all about. It's not about trying to control the access for a high school sporting event.
Okay, so just like regular business hours.
Correct.
Right.
We do have some schools that use, I mean, maybe that's a larger example, but we have something called like batch printing. So if you, for maybe not necessarily like that kind of event, but like say a Valentine's Day party,
Yep.
and you know the attendees ahead of time, you can batch print your badges. So we do have accommodations for, things that have larger amounts of people coming in at one time.
Sure. With like when we had, previous to this, we had events in the school for
Yeah.
a holiday or something like that.
Mhm.
Basically, our folks are doing that manually for all the fourth grades at Darrenowski, for example, 4 or 5 of them, looking at those student lists and who those visitors are. That's a pretty good task for our folks to get all of those folks signed in
I do have schools using them for after hours events too with the kiosk. They have kids chess club come in and sign in through the kiosk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for something small like that, I mean, you certainly could. You've got Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, first robotics, things of that nature. Absolutely, because those are still contained.
Right.
It's not like having the soccer game, the basketball game, the gymnastics event, wrestling event.
Right.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from any of the board members? Well, Christine, I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being invited.
Well, thank you, and giving us a chance to look this over and think about it. And I really do appreciate you taking the time, and you did a great job.
No problem. Thank you. And if you guys have any questions later, feel free to, Tim has my information. Feel free to.
Certainly, we will do that. I appreciate it. Thank you. Have a good
night,
evening.
guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank
All right, continuing on with our meeting. Next is we have communications from the public. Steve, I guess you would be the one to receive any, or have you got anything there?
No, my email was.
I'm sorry, Tim. I'm sorry.
Yep, my email was still on there. I'm checking I've been checking all along. I have not received any emails for public comment.
Okay, thank you. If you do, let me know and we can go back to it, okay?
I will.
Thank you. Communication from board members. Bob, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I did not prepare anything and I wasn't going to say anything, but I just want to make a brief statement here. I have quite a bit of contact with schools all over the state, with teachers, and through a couple of state committees I'm on. And I want to say that Southington, I believe, is doing the absolutely best job of any place I've seen. Our administration, our teachers, our staff, and our students and parents, it's extraordinary what they're doing. And the stress on these people is just off the charts. It really is.
Yeah.
And the second thing is to the public, because I hear it from parents and students and people, because I'm still, part of the community. Please be patient. Please understand that these people are doing the best they can. Nobody likes this. Nobody wants the present situation to be the situation. But there are circumstances, there's monetary circumstances, there's circumstances about the lack of substitute teachers, about how we proceed with everything that just are bigger than is possible right now to handle. So please, if you have criticism, express the criticism, but please be supportive. These people are working incredibly stressful jobs right now. And I think from what I can tell around the state, doing as good a job, if not better, than anywhere else I've seen, really. So I just want to thank all of them and hope we do get through it before too long. Like Joe said, let's sooner the better, but anyway, I'm done.
Thank you, Bob. Very well said. Anyone else on the board have anything to say? Okay, I'll move on to our superintendent for the administrative report.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmody. Just a note, we should all remind ourselves that we're not live, so we should say our names before we speak, just to identify who we are. I mean, it's pretty easy with the first names, but before we speak, we actually should identify ourselves. That's part of the rules of being virtual. So Tim Cannell, superintendent, and I do want to say I didn't actually have this as part of our report, but Mr. Brown, I will say that we receive routinely a good number of very positive emails. Sometimes there are questions that people have, and almost always those emails begin with or end with, I know that the teachers and administrators are working very hard, and we get a lot of thank yous for that. And it's very, very much appreciated. We do also get the opposite kind of emails occasionally, and those are less pleasant. But nonetheless, I did want to say that we have an awful lot of support, not only from our parents, but also from our staff members. And so we receive those. I try to, I share those at times with the board, and I try to make sure that I share the positive ones with Mr. Medancy. So that being said, I have two things. We have three items, but I have two under the first. The first is the Chromebook shipment update. So the first part of that, so two-part. The first part of that is our large shipment, our 3,700 Chromebooks, I believe, Mr. Medancy, yes, are still on schedule for being shipped mid-November. So that date has continued to be the same for the last 6 weeks or so, which I'm going to take as a good sign, because previous to this, every time we checked, it was moved back a couple of weeks. So it seems that we're still on schedule for that mid-November. Large number of devices. When we do get those in, it will be quite a task. We'll get them unboxed. We will get the asset tags on them set up and begin distributing them. For the second part of it, I'm going to go to Mr. Medancy, because we have some good news good news from the state. So someone should write that down. We actually have good news from the state. Mr. Medancy, would you like to share that good news from the state?
Yes, we are expecting on Monday our first shipment of 1,100 Chromebooks. And they actually came with the white glove service, it's called, which we the machines have all been asset tagged and imaged and ready for deployment. They've been unboxed. They come to us in crates. We will be using student helpers and technology staff to uncrate them, for lack of a better term, and put them in the carts and get those carts out to the schools ASAP. Our goal with those devices is to send about 4 class sets to each elementary school, and about 100 devices to each middle school, another 100 devices to the high school. Our challenge, as you guys all know from the spring, we were not one-to-one. So a lot of our students still have limited exposure and experience with the virtual learning environment with tools such as Google Classroom. We haven't been able to get them at, our initial goal, thinking we were going to have the Chromebooks by now, would be to orientate them to their virtual classrooms while we're in person, so that they would be able to navigate their way more independently if we ever had to learn from home remotely, whether it was just a class because of a temporarily remote, situation with a quarantining, or whether the numbers locally rose to the point that we'd have to shift our model. So with those sets, there is a set in every school right now where we've been using those for those temporary remote learners, but now we'll be able to deploy those carts as well to classrooms to really get our students ramped up and exposed to their virtual classrooms, so that they have a skill set if and when they need to use it, which hopefully relieves the pressure on parents. I think that in the spring didn't necessarily have the training or background in some of these tools. And so combination, we are going to be sending out training videos and whatnot to parents as well, especially if we ever go remote, so that they can assist their children. But our goal is to get our youngest learners up and running and get them exposed and familiar with the tools and the interface. And so coming Monday, everyone's really excited because they know this is an important next step for us in terms of just readiness. So that's our plan. And the district technology department, the staff, has been doing an amazing job working with the buildings and trying to get them into the hands of students and getting cards deployed and doing everything we need to do to support our schools.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thanks, thank you, Mr. Medancy.
Yeah, I see it. Mr. Falvo, did you have your hand up when originally, and I didn't mean to ignore you, but would you
Yeah,
have a question?
Yeah, I did. And then Mr. Medancy added to it. So David Falvo here. I just had a couple questions. So you guys talked about the upcoming shipment of Chromebooks into the district. So how many I just missed the numbers. I think Mr. Medancy said 1,100, and I missed the number Mr. Cannellan stated.
3,700.
3,700.
Approximately 30. I believe it's 3,700. Yes.
So between those two upcoming shipments, does that make the district 1-to-1? Or
yes. Yeah, it will, because we're using we didn't order a true 1-to-1 because we had an inventory of devices that were 1 year or less old from our existing inventory, and that's what made the whole in totality of the device inventory that we have.
Mhm. So every student in the district will have access to a device, their own device, not a community device.
Correct. And when I say, good question though, Dave, in terms of using the word access, I like that, because we were not at the get-go planning on assigning every K-1-2 student a device. Those will be carded in the classrooms. They're not going to need to go back and forth daily. A little bit of a risk with young kids with backpacks and high-end electronics. So the idea is to have them housed, but the nice part, if they're located locally, like in their teacher's classroom, if there happens to be an unexpected case and we have to deploy immediately, the devices are already housed in the classroom and we can turn that around almost instantly. But 3rd grade through 12th, we do plan on providing every child a device that will be theirs. So essentially, yes, a full 1-to-1 in terms of just deployment and daily possession is the little bit of the tweak.
What about those K-2 students? So say there was a COVID case late in the afternoon and contact tracing couldn't be done. So and the school had to be closed for the day. How would those devices be turned over to the students so remote learning could be done?
Yep. So we schedule a grab and go kind of pickup process at the schools for that, for the next day. And so you're talking like in an elementary classroom, might be about 16 families. But we also have, on occasion, whenever needed, to use district staff to get them to the child's home if they don't have transportation.
By the next day. So say if it was a Tuesday night, you find out around 6-7 o'clock at night, you can get them for the next morning.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be like the record journal sitting on the bottom of your driveway. That day, it might be, they're getting asynchronous lessons pushed out until they all have their devices, and we might need to start the following day.
Yeah, but you have to be realistic. If we get notification, for example, this just happened. Notification on the Thalberg case was 8 o'clock at night. And quite frankly, I think we did a pretty darn good job of turning that around in a really, really, really decent span of time. And Mrs. Reeves did an amazing job in scheduling all of that, had the Chromebooks at the school and arranged for a parent pickup of that. We're going to always do the very best we can, but we're not going to promise instantaneous access, because it's not realistic, and I don't think you can say that. I think that's
the nice thing that we've learned that we didn't know in the spring is how quickly to set up a grab and go process between the lunches that we've provided, where people know how to kind of keep it in a socially distant and safe way, and yet still be able to inventory and sign off on who's getting that device with that asset tag number, and also how to connect with the families in a safe way so that, everybody is on the same page. And like to Mr. Cannell's point, Thalberg is a textbook example. Kennedy as well, the following day when they had to close down, working with families to pick up and provide devices because they were not 1-to-1. So the schools are really doing a wonderful job. The administrators are working hard with families to make sure we provide that access as quickly as we can.
Hatton did the exact same thing. And so there's two other pieces to this. I want to flash back to when we had the discussion about purchasing these devices. And you may not recall this, because honestly, last June seems like it was 5 years ago. But the discussion was, the combination of the 3,700 Chromebooks, and this is before we knew we were getting 1,100 from the state. The 3,700 Chromebooks plus existing inventory was going to give us enough to be one-to-one for every student in the district and have enough so that we had breakage, replacements, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the discussion and our intention. And when we do have those, we were supposed to have them by the end of July, which is, I mean, that's old news. Everyone knows that at this point in time. But that was the intent, so that we would have devices for every student in the district. And at that time, we also had the discussion about K2. We would have them in the rooms and they would be available for students. Now, here's the second piece of that though. Last March, when we knew we were closing, we closed before the governor said everyone was going to close. All the Hartford area districts all closed on March 13th. And the governor finally came out with, well, we're closing on March 16th. So we already did that. Not only did we have packets of information prepared because we knew that was coming, right, Mr. Medancy? We had packets of information prepared and being sent home during the course of the week. We also had Chromebooks out and being deployed. So if we know that the metrics are trending in that direction, and it's likely that we're going to have to go full remote with the Chromebooks right there in the classroom, we'll be able to deploy those and have those go home with the students just like we did last spring. Only I think we'll be in much better shape than we were in March, certainly.
And that's awesome that we have such a quick process for the grab and go, and that we have this planned out. And I thank you guys for that. I do have another question. What percentage of students in the district do not have internet access? Do we know that number? And what is the district's plan for ensuring that they do have internet access?
I'll take that one. I think if you asked our families right now, 90% of them would tell you they don't have network access, because that's what it seems like with all of the requests we're getting for hotspots. But we actually had done a survey actually quite a few years back. Some of the board members may remember when we were considering a one-to-one device, and it was a combination of who has a device and who has internet. And at the time, we were actually close to around 91% of our families had internet access in the home. What we're running into, and unfortunately, this has become my life this week, and I think you may have had an opportunity to see a correspondence I sent out to the SPS staff today. The issues aren't always network access. So we may have a family saying, I have network access, but if you're running 15 smart devices in your home between speakers, TVs, gaming systems, tablets, smartphones, and computers, and you're streaming, you're just really just draining the bandwidth exponentially and asking a lot of a machine, if you will, in order to keep up with the demands of streaming in a live class, especially where you have multiple, 2 parents working from the home and maybe a sibling. You got 4 devices streaming simultaneously. Additionally, we have problems with sometimes a kid is up in the bedroom because that's a quiet place to work because everyone's home. And yet the modem is downstairs in a home office. And some of these homes are large homes that I'm talking. So the signal is not making its way to the device. And there's an assumption that there's a device issue. And lastly, Mr. Oshanda touched upon this. Some neighborhoods in Southington, he touched upon this a couple of meetings ago, depending on the carrier, even if we were to provide a hotspot, don't carry a strong enough signal to give them the streaming bandwidth that they need to actively engage with live instruction. And so, originally our goal was to say cameras must be on. We've had to make some adjustments along the way now. At times, if you're trying to load Canvas up or Google Classroom and it's spinning, shut your camera for a minute so that that page can load, and then you turn your camera back on. Like little fixes and workarounds like that to get things to work together and jive. But that's a really long answer. But in terms of true families that have no internet, I would say we're not as probably not as high as the demand we're getting for hotspots. But I also think it might be the tiered level of internet service that people are paying for that maybe can't keep up the demands the household is placing on it. So it's really a very complex question. And that's why I sent that out today, to get families hopefully to understand that we can't just provide every family that requests a hotspot one as just the quick go-to fix, because there are data plans, there are carrier signals, there are other things associated with our efforts to do that. And I just, it would be something that would be a task that I don't think the district could could handle.
But so this is Tim Cannell again. Let's flash back to the spring. We did a survey, and we had in the neighborhood, we ended up distributing, I want to say it was between 75 and 100 hotspots.
Mhm.
Those were for families that truly did not have access. So we did that, and we also looked at that again in the fall. So there's two different issues here. Do you truly have, not have access, or is your bandwidth in the house not adequate, or certainly not where you want it to be? And I think that's the secondary problem. But when we did it, the number of families who indicated that they did not have access was in that 75 to 100 range. I don't know, Mrs. Colgrove is looking at me right now. She probably has the number right on the tip of her tongue. But we did do that. There was also, to go along with the Chromebooks that the state didn't tell us they were going to get for us, but we're thankful that they did. There was also a service where parents would receive a voucher for connection, right? For broadband connection. And we received 9, 10, 11, something like that in terms of the actual vouchers. We only had one family take the voucher or accept the voucher, as I recall. It was a fairly low number. But when we did our due diligence in the springtime, we did have quite a few families who really didn't have access, and that's why we went the hotspot route with those families. So with the secondary problem that has developed is the one of the amount of bandwidth in the home. But we really looked at those families initially, Mr. Falvo, who just didn't have access, and we wanted to make sure that they did.
But to the board's point, you may get some emails from people as we start to review requests from hotspots that are very unhappy that the district isn't providing them a hotspot. But when we do a connectivity audit, I mean, quite honestly, if you're living in a $600,000, 3,800 square foot home, and you're asking us for a hotspot because you've got a lot of devices running in your home, that's a difficult conversation, because who bears the responsibility there to provide the network access that's adequate for the student in the home at that time? It can't always be just give us a hotspot and we'll move on our way, because like I said, there's an inventory issue with that, trying to keep up with the demand. There's lead time with every time we replenish, and there's a monthly data cost to the district to that. Our goal really is for families that don't have internet to make sure they have internet in their home.
That's what we did. Exactly.
Joe, I see your hand up.
Yeah, so Dave actually stole my question. So thanks, Dave, but it actually brought up a couple other things that I had been thinking about. So when you request a hotspot, I know that we're doing a connectivity audit and everything else. It's interesting that you bring up the 600,000 square foot, the $600,000 house type thing. Is there a way that we can, I guess, create some sort of application process for that? Number one, to just cut down, but then maybe in lieu of that as well, I don't know if there's recommendations from our IT that, like, hey, listen, these network extenders are really good. This is what we suggest. Just sort of like a quick email that, sort of give people other options to be able to boost their own modems and things like that. Just because, again, me as sort of a layperson, and I'm sure James could attest to this about me, is, again, like I tend not to utilize technology until I absolutely need it. And, somebody went over the whole network extenders, and it's revolutionized my my household. And again, like I never had to need it before, and now that we're trying to have quiet places for Hannah to do her work, Ziggy to do his work type stuff. It's I think if we as a district sort of created something to maybe send out to parents, if we haven't already.
So that was going to be my point. So Tim Cannell, again, Mr. Medancy and that tech team already developed an entire set of criteria. And when this happens, there's a tech team member who would then talk with the family about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did do that. That was a necessary step.
Okay.
Okay. Continuing, Mr. Cannell, you have
Okay. Thanks. I have two Two more items.
Yes.
The first one, we included this in your board packet. You see that DPH created a town level COVID response framework. That's different than was there previously. And I actually just received right before the board meeting happened a revised addendum 4. And in addendum 4, you may recall, I don't know, there's been a lot of information that it was almost a hard and fast number. You know, if you're above 10 cases per 100,000 in a week, and those were county-wide numbers, you were supposed to move to hybrid learning and continue in a hybrid learning model until you hit above 25 and then move to remote learning. So that guidance has been revised, and as State Department of Education, as DPH has learned more, they realize that there's a little more flexibility that's required. So the numbers that you see on that infographic, as they term it, are a little more flexible, and you can see the flexibility. It's not an automatic move from one to the other, and the numbers of new cases per 100,000 are based on a two-week average. And whereas before they were looking at it as a county, they're still collecting county and state numbers and comparing those, of course, but it's really looking at a town by town set of data. So there's a little bit more information. And when I get a chance to review the explanation that was just sent by the State Department of Education, I'll forward that on as well. But it's a little different way to look at it. And when we get to that point, the discussions are DPH, State Department of Education through the Commissioner's Office, and then at the local health department and local district level. So it's not just going to be numbers, and it's not just going to be one agency making that determination.
James, did you have a question?
Yeah. So what are the numbers looking like today or for the last couple of weeks? How many cases per 100,000 are we looking at right now?
Sure. I didn't look, it usually changes on Thursday, and I honestly didn't look this morning, but as of last week, we were at 4.1 in Southington. 2 weeks prior to that, we were at 2.8, I want to say. So the trend is up, as it is across the state. We're still, if you look at the interactive map, we're still in that gray area, which is the under 5. You know, the red areas are the ones that you've read about in the paper, or you've seen on television. You know, the Danburys, the Norwich, et cetera, where the cases have exploded. The biggest concerns I think that people have right now are those. You know, the cases exploding. The DPH personnel say continuously, and we meet with them every Tuesday. They say continuously, they're not finding the transmission occurring in schools. It's happening outside of school. It's happening at other events, such as small get-togethers. You know, you've read it all. You don't need to have me repeat it. But it's those other types of events that are generating these positive cases, and they have an impact on us. If we have a student whose parent tests positive, then that student is a close contact. The quarantine. If the student then tests positive, their classmates become close contacts. So there is a ripple effect.
Mr.
I
Cook,
think
I have the numbers in front of me. It's right now, it was the week 1 cases, because as he just explained, it's over a 2-week period. The week 1 cases were 12. The week 2 cases were 23. Our cases per 100,000 right now are 5.7.
Oh, we went up.
Yes.
Yeah. So that means we're out of the gray. We're into the yellow, I guess. But nonetheless, it's still something that we're monitoring every week. I think I've said this a number of times, but it bears repeating. We meet with the Department of Public Health in a webinar setting every Tuesday, and that is literally about 400 or 500 superintendents, school nurses, other public health officials. So we get the updates. We get the local updates every Tuesday through our health district. The town managers, superintendents, school nurses and HR directors all have the opportunity to chat about what's going on locally.
I think you have one more item.
I do have one more item. So the athletic facility study was completed, and we had the opportunity to sit down with them and get a view of that. I had Mr. Shoto come in, Mr. Romano, myself, Mr. Risser. And what I'm going to do then, Mrs. Carmody, if you don't mind, I'll work with you on a date. That's a fairly detailed report, and it's probably a lengthy presentation. And as long as we're doing things virtually, I think it would be a good idea to schedule that as a special meeting virtually and do it on a non-board meeting day.
Okay,
so
fine.
so that there's ample time for that and people have ample time to ask questions. So I wanted to let everyone know that that has been completed, and if we can work on scheduling that time, then we can do a dedicated meeting just around that, so that you can have the results in hand, have time to ask questions, and we will have a report. What I'd like to do, I will talk with them, it's Castle Booze, is get that in, if we can get it in digital format and get it out to you ahead of time. But I think it does need some explanation, obviously. It's not just the.
We'll work on a special date for that then. Okay, thank you, Mr. Canelli.
Perfect. And
Any
that was it.
questions of Mr.
Thank you.
Canelli on that? All right, now, next we have our student reps. Do I want to see someone that wants to go first? Okay, Brett, go right ahead.
Brett, you're on mute.
Actually, I'm going to start first today. I'm pretty sure, at least.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. This is Jaleesa Vincent. For those of you, hi. First on the agenda, steps. Oops, sorry. The Halloween costume contest hosted by the Steps think tank will take place Friday, October 30th. Students and staff will wear their costumes during the school day and will be judged by Mr. Pepe, APs, class advisors, and class officers. Participants will be given prizes for best overall, most creative, funniest, and most relevant to their subject area for teachers. Students will enter by submitting a photo on social media of them in their costume. Virtual students must be wearing their costume to class as well. Teachers will nominate themselves or colleagues by snapping a picture and emailing their APs. Everyone must wear a CDC approved mask if in the building, and students and staff may wear hats / ear headpieces as long as they can still be identified. And no like any, what was the word? Inappropriate language, inappropriate costumes. All winners will be announced Friday, period 8, the same day. We are trying to keep the positive vibes flowing at SHS. Secondly, the student elections have been completed. All students from each class has voted for their running peers October 20th, and the winners were announced yesterday on Canvas the 21st. Congratulations to the officers of class officers of 2021, 22, 23, and 24.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So I know Jalissa wouldn't explicitly state it, but she is the secretary for class of 2022. So
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
So continuing, tonight, as most of you know, is virtual open house. Teachers have created videos for parents and students if they would like to watch them. And it was made available tonight at 5 p.m. and they will not shut it down per se, because there could be new students who are transferring from other school districts. And in these videos, all teachers cover the basics, which include what the room looks like, contact information, a syllabus of the course, and tech issues contact information. So I think, or continuing, I think at last meeting, we discussed, or we told you that PSAT day is October 29th. Grade 12, or I'm sorry, grade 11 is required. Grades 9, 10, and 12 are remote and do have a full school day. This will be put in Mr. Pepe's PSA as a reminder this weekend for all students. And finally, for me, Music of the Night was held on October 14th, 2020. There were no other teams from other school districts, so it was mostly a performance for the parents, which was great, and it was held at Fontana Field. So now I'll pass it on to Amrit.
Okay, hi guys. It's
Hi.
So I have the sports update. Bear with me, it's kind of long. But all good news. Our girls soccer team is undefeated till date. The Lady Knights have not allowed an opposition goal in all season. For boys soccer, they just collected their second win of the season. For our girls and boys cross country teams, we're 3-0 and 3-1 this season, and we have our next meet October 28th at Farmington. Our girls swim and dive team are waiting their final results for their first ever virtual meet against Bristol. They swam yesterday with separate officials at each venue. We're presently undefeated. Our volleyball team is coming off with a straight set win. That's their third victory of the season. And the team is hosting at Bristol Central tonight in the SHS West Gym. The match is actually currently being streamed as we speak on Twitch, and they had their senior night this last Monday on the 19th. Our field hockey team travels to Simsbury tomorrow afternoon. They tied against Farmington and Canton, and they're searching for their first victory of the season. Lastly, we have our Blue Knights football game tomorrow, and they're gonna have their cheerleaders and dance team in recognition of their rising seniors. So it's also our senior night. It'll be a non-contact football competition and starts at 6 tomorrow at the fields. And that is all we have for you tonight. So thank you.
We had quite a report. There was a lot going on. I want you to know during this whole meeting, Mr. Pepe has been eating. And I'm dying to know what he's been eating. Are you going to share? No, okay. Moving on. Thanks, kids. Next we have our Policy and Personnel Committee meeting. Mrs. Clark?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mrs. Carmody. And I'm going to bet Mr. Pepe is having popcorn. I'm just
No, it
guessing.
wasn't popcorn. It was potato chips or something.
Hey, leave them alone.
No,
I'm just thinking
Leave 'em alone.
Mr. Oshana is going to be
Potato chips? Wait a minute,
jealous of,
wait,
yeah, I
wait a
was going to
minute.
say, Mr. don't say potato chips. That's why I said
Got nothing
popcorn.
in front of me here.
It's okay. All right, we had our last Policy and Personnel Committee meeting before our last meeting, which is why you're getting updated on it now. We're bringing forth this evening, after our discussion and review, 2 job descriptions. One is a network manager, and that was a position that was created several years ago, but never filled. And the district is now is revisiting that. And the second job description we're bringing and we'll be voting on later in the meeting is the associate athletic director. And again, this was a stipend position proposed and adopted, but we hadn't moved on it until now. We also discussed 4 of the policies that we have up for our first read for this evening in the 1000 series. So if you do have any questions about that, feel free to either contact Steve or myself. Do we have any questions about any of this? You have you've already gotten the information on this, but
There was a lot of information, so thank you for all of that. A lot of work. I can see.
It's a lot of, there's a lot of reading with these policies. Steve's shaking his head going,
And I just want to add one thing for our board, just because we're on the topic of policy for the agenda's sake. It's just good information to have because we did touch upon it towards the end of the policy committee, just as a process, issue. That our board as a whole, as you guys know, going back a couple of years now, the amount of legislative action that continues to occur each session just creates a backlog of policies that need to be either adopted, reviewed, or revised. And so our conversation at the last policy committee meeting was the model policies that we are provided by Shipman are very reliable and extremely aligned with both the practices of the district and compliant with all of the requirements associated with the mandates that are passed down to us. So my goal will be to try and get our policy committee members, larger batches of policies and maybe a longer time in between our meetings. Maybe if I can get them those about a month in advance so that they've got time to review them and so that we can bring you policies that have been vetted already by the committee, but really use this as an opportunity with the Shipman model policies to start to kind of catch up and close that gap for some of the policies that are outstanding that we need to adopt.
Big job, Steve. There's so much to do in policy. But thank you very much, the entire committee. Next are town government communications. I don't believe we have anything, Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Kennellan.
I do have one, but before I do that, can I just go back to one thing, because I actually thought our students were going to cover this, but perhaps they may not have known this. I didn't want to steal this particular thunder, as they say, but I do have something to announce, if you don't mind. And this has to do with an award. So Southington High School has been given the national recognition of being a Special Olympics National Unified Champion School.
Wow, wonderful.
Oh, wonderful.
Great.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Now,
they do a great job. Oh,
so I've just had, just yesterday, some communication, we just found this out
that's great.
yesterday. So we've had some communication back and forth internally, and we want to do some type of a recognition for this. So the initial proposal, and I'm sure this is going to be refined over time. I know, and Mr. Pepe's smiling now because he's taking full credit for this, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, sure. He's
The,
still eating.
It's our staff and our students. But nonetheless, one of the dates that we talked about is November 5th. So if you can keep that in mind, and perhaps honoring or doing this recognition. We happen to have a girls volleyball game that evening at 6 o'clock. And I believe the boys soccer game was originally scheduled for 3:45, and they're in the process of rescheduling that to 5:45. So we thought, depending on the weather, we could do this either inside or outside. But of course, me wanting to have more recognition rather than less recognition, we're going to see if there's a way to do it at both. So if there's a way for us to do it, say, at the outset of the boys soccer game, and then do it at the outset of the volleyball game, or at halftime of one and the beginning of the other. So look for that. I'll get the information to you. And Jalissa, Amrit, and Brett, I apologize if I did take that away from you guys. But I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that. It's pretty exciting news for us.
It sounds wonderful.
So I do have one, which is town government communications, and Mrs. Danello, Mrs. Clark, and myself attended the Board of Finance meeting last week, at which time Mrs. Danello did a wonderful job explaining the non-lapsing account, just like she did at the board meeting the previous week. And there were some questions, but there was an awful lot of information there, and the Board of Finance has been great in its level of understanding, quite frankly. And so the town government communication that I just want to make sure everyone was aware that the Board of Finance did agree to fund the non-lapsing account at the maximum level, which is 2% of the gross previous year's budget. So that is the $1,963,779. So that non-lapsing account stands funded at that level. So thank you to our members of the Board of Finance for their excellent questions, their good dialogue and understanding. And I've had some dialogue with folks back and forth, and also to Mr. Shota for his work on that. He's always an advocate of doing the right thing for our students. And in this particular case, I think everyone knows that we're in a tough spot having to fund some things that weren't budgeted. So it continues to be a good partnership, and I wanted to make sure that we said that publicly. So, and that was it for me, Mrs. Carmody. Thank you.
Well, and that's great to hear. And Sherry, I of course, I'm sure as always, you were very prepared and did an excellent report, and we appreciate the finance board understanding the times that we are going through. So thank all of you that were there, and Mrs. Clark for attending.
And I do have to say that Mr. Cannellan and Mrs. Danello were spot on with answers, questions, and there was
Sure.
really a spirit of cooperation at the meeting, which among all the Board of Finance members, it was a very good dialogue. And I really think Mrs. Danello and Mr. Cannellan got the message across of what the needs were, and they understood. So it was good.
Well, thank you.
Mhm.
Oh. Moving on, we have Mr. Brown with the Southern Union High School Citizen in Action Unit, our second reading. Does this call for a motion, Mr. Cannellan?
Yeah, I'm all set with it.
Okay, so go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, before I make the motion, I just want to thank some people first, because again, we mentioned this last time, but the teachers and administrators who develop these units, with everything else going on, to spend their summer and other time developing this, and they're sensational when you read the units. I also want to thank Mr. Bedancy. He doesn't get thanked enough for his work. I mean, look at all the different things we've talked about that he's been involved with. And then I want to thank the committee too, Missy and Terry, both of you, for your input in our committee work. Thank you. So I move to approve the SHS Citizenship in Action units and the SHS Science units as recommended by the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. And I need a second.
A second.
Did you second it? Did Missy second it?
I did.
Yes.
I did too.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Oh,
No, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Well, I just wanted to commend on the job of that, because certainly the citizenship in action is near and dear to my heart. And you know, there's definitely a couple of things in it that I just wanted to sort of mention. You know, specifically it talked about the different challenges that we face today. You know, especially the how some want to dissolve certain things like the Electoral College and things like that. I think this executed the way that I know that Southington's going to do it is a very good way of shedding light on both sides of an argument, especially nowadays where people are so eagerly willing to just shut down the conversation. Nope, you can't be right. Nope, I don't see it that way. You're wrong. And then that's the end of it. So I'll tell you, like, I think this is a really good start to something that can potentially teach our kids a lot about, you know, where we started, how things have evolved, and why some of the things that our great grandfathers did are actually still pertinent and important for today. So this is great stuff, and thank you guys so much for putting that together. Again, it was a long read, but it was great. I'm very passionate about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're spot on, Joe. We need this more than ever. And I think they will do it right about different perspectives and respect for each other. So thank you.
They are exciting reads. When you read through that stuff, there's a lot to read, but it's pretty cool stuff to read through, and how appropriate it is for right now. These are classes I'd love to take right now. And Bob, you said it, the teaching team that put these things together spent you hit it. They really worked their tails off to come up with something that's pertinent.
Yeah.
And Joe, yeah, you know, being able to see both sides. I mean, my God, nobody sees both sides anymore, and you need to do that. There's got to be a lot more of that if we truly want to have some cooperation and get anything accomplished any longer. So great job on these things. They're really fantastic.
So we had a motion and we had a second, but we haven't taken a vote, correct? So
Correct.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
So we all approve of that. Next, you have Mr. Brown with the science unit, second reading.
I included that in the motion, actually.
He did.
Oh, he did? I'm sorry.
It was in the
both.
motion, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you
I didn't
sneaky.
hear it.
Oh, 9B and C.
I
All
wasn't
right.
paying attention, Bob.
I wasn't paying attention, but sorry, Mr. Brown, I missed that. So it's 9B and C. Okay.
Yes.
So that was in the motion with.
I did put it in the motion. I mean, I could have separated. I didn't think there'd be a lot of controversy, but
Are we okay with the way he did that?
Science and politics, Bob. There's lots of controversy.
Non-controversial.
if you
Good move.
prefer, I'll withdraw the motion and we can spend more
No.
time on separating.
Efficiency at its best.
We are
Good,
passing,
Bob.
excuse me, we are passing both, right?
Yes.
We
Okay.
just did pass both.
Thank you. I don't know where I was for that.
All right, no, it's okay.
I apologize,
Colleen, I
Bob.
guess you have the next, the job approval of,
Yes, in fact, I have two. Can I combine them?
you do whatever you
Mr.
like.
Medancy's going, yeah, okay.
All right.
Move to approve the job description for network manager and associate athletic director as presented.
Second,
Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so they both carry. Go. I think that's it for you, Colleen.
Yep, because the next are just the policies and it's the first reading.
Okay, just the first reading. And there was, you know, I know all of you who read through that. There was just so much to read through, and the policy is just, we have so many policies to read through, but pretty impressive I thought, when you read through all of our policies, and certainly our code of conduct for our students and so forth. Very well done. So a lot of work. So I appreciate all the work all you committee members do. So thank you. I think that.
Mr. Darrenowski's not here, so somebody has to.
I'll do it. I'll
Joe,
take
go ahead.
Bernowski.
Joe, be the big hero. Go ahead.
Move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Second.
Are all
Have a
those-
great night, everybody.
Thank you all.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Hey,
Good night. Thank you
Steve,
all.
are you still there? Steve Medancy?
He's
Yes.
still there.
I'm gonna send you an email. I wanted to ask you a couple questions at some
Sure.
point, so look out for it. Thanks, buddy.
Bye, everybody.